Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting live stream for this week's PGA Championship. Going to break down what you need to know before lock. Any of your live questions down in chat, whether it's over there for DFS, your large field GPPs, or on the prop side on Pick 6 Underdog or Prize Picks. We're going to get all of that through there. We're going to start with the golf course, a look at the weather, and some of the implications on your exposure on other sites. But first off, welcome into the live chat wherever you guys are. We got No John down there. What's going on? He says this is in week. Okay. What's going on? Jordan. We got Philly down there who's fired up. Same thing over here. It's a major championship week. New father versus newly single. Yeah, the narratives are going crazy this week. Should be a good one. What's going on, Camera Bro? Says, let's get it from Venice, Florida. First off, beautiful area. You got to love it over there. And yeah, let's get it for this week. What's going on, Rev Cloud? What's going on, Ross? Hopefully you guys are having a solid Wednesday evening, which honestly, it's like Friday evening for us golf fans, right? Right there before lock. And we've got ourselves a special one at store this week. And like any major championship venue, this one is tough, right? Back in 2014 is the last time that we saw Valhalla Golf Club, and it played about a half a stroke over par. Now, there have been some changes to the golf course, including about 300 yards of added yardage. Now, it might not play to that full 7,600 yards, but there is that potential for that much added length. And on top of that, they've also tried to make this golf course more difficult on and around the green. So it should be a pretty stiff test. Really, the only barrier to that would be the soft conditions that we're expecting. So on Tuesday, they got about a half an inch of rain. Today, they got about or expecting about a 1/10 of an inch, maybe a little bit less than that of rain. So that little bit of precipitation is going to soften this place up. So I back there in 2014. So if we go back to the past results page, break it down round by round, you'll see that early on, right, it played like a stroke, nearly like a stroke and a third over par for the first 2 days. The last two, it played under par. So the big differentiator back there in 2014 was a rainstorm that happened. So the rainstorm came in about halfway through the event, made round two a little bit more difficult, but you can see on the weekend, they took advantage, right? Went out there and were able to score. Part of that is getting all those PGA professionals out of there, right? All the guys out of form, right? Out of the cut after the first 2 days. But the other part was that rain and the receptiveness of this golf course. So while you're still going to have the scrubs in the field for the first 2 days, I do think that an even par or even an under par scoring average is potentially possible at this major. So at the beginning of the week, I thought maybe 10 under par was going to win. I have adjusted that myself to something closer to 20, maybe even better than 20 under par. So we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. I'm honestly hoping that there's not as much scoring as what I'm expecting, but a player like Scotty Rory on a soft golf course, right, with little to no wind on 3 of the 4 days. I think the only day that's expected to be a little windy might be Friday. Outside of that, it looks like pretty pristine scoring conditions, and there's even more rain coming on Wednesday and Saturday, and potential delays there on Saturday too. That could just make this golf course even more scoreable. So I think compared to some major championships, this one might be a little bit more of a birdie fest to what we're used to seeing. And it's not really the golf course's fault, right? They have a sub-air system. They're going to be pumping it all weekend. Quail Hollow, it was extremely effective. I mean, we saw how firm those greens stayed up. Hopefully it's as effective. If it is, maybe we do get a firm golf course, at least for the greens, that is, over the first few days, but we'll have to see. So I heard that the drainage there was really good. I know that they do have a sub-air system pumping, so there's a chance that they can get this thing so it isn't completely soggy, but you saw what happened back in 2014. So I don't know if the sub-air was a new addition since then or not. It probably was, to be honest, since they had that scoring over the weekend. So again, a lot of different factors that we really don't know what to expect, but at least we're throwing out there from the narrative perspective. In general, though, it's going to play long, right? With that added length, they only have sub-air systems under the green. So those fairways are still going to be receptive. They're still going to run out a little bit less than what they're hoping for. And if they play it to 7,600 yards, which is now the course yardage around Valhalla Golf Club, at least from the tips where they're playing the championship, members play it much shorter, right? Probably closer to like 71, 7150 in terms of the yardage. If it plays to that distance with no rollout, it is going to just be all bombers at the top of the leaderboard. So that narrative hasn't changed so much as I think that there's just going to be more birdie production out there. In terms of the weather conditions, I don't see a definitive edge for the first few days. So normally we look at this weather, we try and find whether the AM or the PM wave is going to be the one to target, and it's going to be all about Friday. So I just want to say for Thursday, it looks about as flat as you're going to get. There might be slightly higher winds in the PM than the morning, but it is sub 10 miles an hour the entire day. And then from the wind gust perspective, it might go slightly up out there from about 5 to 7 p.m., but they should be finishing up by 5 or 6, so they won't even be getting most of that wind that's kicking up, and it's only kicking up to 9 to 11 mile an hour wind gusts. So it's little to no wind out there Thursday. I would say the morning, afternoon are probably going to play pretty similar when it comes to a scoring average. On Friday, though, is where it gets a little bit more dicey. So on Friday, they're calling for some sort of storm to come through. In fact, a few of the different weather sites, so not just windy.com over here, are calling for it to be a thunderstorm that comes through on Friday. So of course, if it's a thunderstorm, there's any sort of electricity, they're going to have to halt play at some stage. But it's further complicated because some models out there for Friday, in fact, if you go to this NAM model, it's not calling for this so much anymore. They were calling for really heavy PM winds. So they were calling for some sort of a storm earlier to come through in the morning, in the afternoon, like 20, 30 mile an hour wind gusts. Now, as of the last update, which was about 2 hours ago, now they're calling for the heavier winds in the morning. So Friday has fluctuated quite a bit. In fact, if we go model to model here, GFS is one of the better ones out there. It's not calling for much wind at all out there on Friday. In fact, more of just like a rainy overcast sort of forecast. The ECM model, same kind of thing, right? More of just that overcast. I would say the morning looks a lot better on this forecast, at least compared to the PM wave. They're not really conclusive out there for Friday. So the one thing they all agree on is that tomorrow is going to be pretty flat. It's going to be close to ideal conditions. You're going to have low winds all day, mild temperatures, soft greens, especially soft fairways because of the rain that came through. And I think you're going to see these guys tear up the golf course. So if there's a round where this is going to play under par, it's there on Thursday. And I think the morning and the afternoon guys are going to have ceiling performances. Now, if you're playing showdown for tomorrow, I favor the AM guys as they have slightly lower winds. They're also going to be players that are playing on more pristine greens, right, without all the people trampling on them. But it's not the kind of advantage that matters for main slate, right? The more effective day, the day that matters a lot more, right, that has a lot more consequence is going to be Friday, of course, right? If there's potential rain during play, if there's a potential delay going on, right, where the PM wave Friday finishes up on Saturday, right, that could be a way for them to get to the optimal lineup, right? Maybe there's no delay on Friday and the winds, in fact, are higher on that PM wave like they were calling for before. If that happens, right, then maybe the PM AM are the guys that you want, right? The guys that are going off early on Friday, whereas the PM guys get blown off the golf course with wind. So there are a bunch of different ways this could go. Essentially, I say that to say that I'm stacking both waves. So I'm going to have about 20% of lineups. I haven't built my set of 150 quite yet, and I'm planning on taking 20% of my lineups and stacking them in both directions. So, and by the way, what I mean by that, if you're new to PGA DFS, maybe only playing it for this major championship, is that, I'm playing 150 lineups, first of all, the large field GPP, and 20% of them, so 30 of my 150 lineups, I'm only going to play guys that are in the PM wave. So the guys that are starting from, I think it's like 11:30 local time onwards, something like that. And then the other 30%, the other 20%, the other 30 lineups that I'm going to use for the other wave will only be guys that are starting early, right? That are teeing off between, I think it's like 7 a.m. local and 9 a.m. local, something like that. So I'll be going AM, PM on lineups. I think going PM, AM on other lineups. And then that other, 60% of lineups that I have left over are going to be just random lineups that are playing that leverage in the game theory game that I'm playing just in general. So I'm going to have some weather stacks. I'm going to have a lot of lineups. In fact, most of my lineups that aren't really playing the weather at all, because Thursday looks like a toss-up. Again, it's all going to come down to Friday, and there's no definitive forecast that I trust at this point. So when that happens, when there's a lot of unknown, a lot of potential delays that we could have, most of those are on Friday. And in fact, if you look at Saturday too, guys, it's even worse when it comes to the weather. In fact, there's a much higher chance of a delay out there on Saturday as opposed to what we have on Friday. It's all stuff that could throw us completely off, right? We could go out there, try and find a wind edge out there in a model, right? So you might see this early Friday morning, go, okay, well, let's fade those guys. But what if this storm that comes through, again, they're calling for a storm around midday, is something that delays play, right? Comes in around like 9, 10 a.m., delays play. They go out there after a storm, right? So after there's a little bit of rain on the golf course, calm conditions, and then blow up the golf course and kill it, right? And then these guys, right, the PM guys that probably aren't going to be able to finish their round out there Friday, maybe Saturday morning with this rain is harder, right? I mean, there are just so many different scenarios that could go through here. We're not going to go through all of them on stream, but you get the idea, right? Where trying to lean too much into any one weather edge will probably get you in trouble. So what I'll say for like your single entries is I would probably not take all 6 players from the same wave. But in large field GPPs where you're trying to, have the absolute nuts win against 50 to sometimes even like 150,000 entries, right, on a major championship week like this, that's where it's a little bit more useful. So we'll leave it there. I know it was a lot of talk about the weather in the golf course, but it's a major championship. A lot of people are going to be playing DFS this week, so I want to make sure I hit you guys with the goods. Let's bring up our DFS projections, talk through some game theory, some ownership, all that fun stuff, and a few players that I'm taking this week that I guess I just wanted to point out here before lock. So there are going to be some extra plays that I have highlighted on here. Of course, the core plays and value plays that I mentioned out there in our Monday video. And if there's any specific players that you want my take on, that you want an ownership number on, just go ahead and let me know down in live chat, because the players that I have highlighted, of course, the core plays are on here, but everything else is censored for my Patreon page. So everything here that is blacked out, like Rory, for example, right, whether he's in my poll, his ownership number are blacked out. Xander, Ludwig, right? All these sort of guys that are down here in black, you can check out there on the Patreon. So, of course, guys, to join my Patreon, there's a link down in the description of this live stream, this replay if you're watching it after the fact. And on there, you have all those ownership numbers. But if you want a player's ownership in particular, just let me know. And there's a good chance I'll just give it to you down in the live chat, right? So obviously don't just like name 5 players and go give me their ownership, right? Let's keep it reasonable, like 1, maybe 2 players on the live stream. But yeah, if there's somebody you're really curious about, just let me know. Curious about in terms of stats, whether they fit the golf course, all of that. Now is the time for all of those DFS questions. Before we do so, before we hop on in, go through some of our tiers, let's catch up on live chat, see what's going on. We got James down there. Michael, what's going on? What's going on? Brant says Master Luke. What's going on, dude? Hopefully you're having a good night. What's going on, Chris? Thoughts on Dietrich? I think a good low-owned pivot for GPPs. I don't think he's one of our highlighted plays, but I am playing him this week. And I have him at about, I think, 2, maybe 3% ownership. So not much attention. So definitely good for leverage purposes. Antonio says, what is up, bro? Is a divorced Rory a lock of the century? I think it's intriguing. I'm not sure how it's going to affect him. You have to think, right? This has probably been brewing for at least half a month, probably at least a month at this stage, right? Before you actually go out there and file divorce. So based on the last 2 starts, right? Win down there in Zurich, win last week at Wells Fargo. I'd say it's working out pretty well for him. But yeah, well, I guess we'll talk about Rory. I am not playing him this week. So I guess that kind of tips my hand on it. What's going on? It says, who are the top 10 bent grass putters? So I guess we can start with that. Why not? So I'll just sort this by bent grass putting. So, and I can give you that real quick here. So let me go ahead, take this sort. Actually, okay, it'll work actually. So let's do that. Let's column M. I was worried about like me blacking out stuff, screwing up the formatting and whatnot, but I don't think it will. So bent grass putting, largest to smallest. So your top 10 bent grass putters are these guys at the top. So some of them are going to be small sample size players. So like Collett, for example, I think he's a PGA Tour professional, would certainly be that kind of example. David Puig too, right? He probably only has like 4 rounds measured on bent grass, but players with a more realistic sample size would be Denny McCarthy, Lucas Herbert, Bo Hostler, all guys I would include there. Tom Whiting, probably a small sample size thing, but Hisatune, Minwoo Lee, Locke I'd also throw out for a small sample, but Rose, English, Eric Cole, McNeely are all your top putters out there on bent grass. So let me go ahead, sort this back by Draftkings price. Hopefully it didn't screw up the formatting. It shouldn't have, based on what I was looking at. But yeah, that's your answer out there, boss. And not a bad way to look at it, but I have to say that putting, not my number 1 key stat this week. So I'd be a little hesitant before going all out on some of that, at least the putting stats. Do I think that Clark will do better at Valhalla? He didn't have his best last week. Yeah, I think so. That's why I bet him outright. Players have bad weeks, right? And when they do so, you oftentimes get a better number terms of ownership, better outright number, like you're getting with Wyndham Clark. So there's a lot of incentive to taking a player that didn't play that well. Give you Tiger. I couldn't blame you, Colin, right? Hey, it's a major. I'm not going to do it myself, but it's Tiger Woods, right? You can't go wrong. It's the GOAT. James Romanowski, thoughts on Eckroat and Goddard? So let me get a sip of my coffee. Let's find them on here. So Eckroat and Goddard. So Austin Eckroat's $5,700. I would say that I'm about like a 5.5, 6 out of 10 on him. So I would say that's better than most down here, right? Most of these guys down here, I'm at like a 3, 3.5 on, right? Like a Brendan Todd, I'm at like a 2 on. So, pretty decent. Like Nick Dunlap, I'm at like a 5.5, 6 on too. Like guys, I think are pretty decent plays this week. And same thing with Goddard, right? $5,700 too. He's probably 5.5, 6 coming off the win of Myrtle Beach. Not enough for me to get there though. So I think they're decent plays, but I think my player pool was like 45 players, which is honestly larger than what I normally do for a 150 max. And I wasn't even playing guys like Goddard, for example, that honestly thinks a pretty good play. Hit the like button. You heard the guy. Go ahead, do so if you haven't already, guys. What's going on, David? Need a last minute in as a pivot for your single entry. If uses chalk, who'd I like the best out of these pivots? That would be a Mav, Dunlop, Rogers, EVR, or Hubbard. So if I had to choose one of those players, I like a few of them. In fact, I'm taking 2 of them in my player pool this week. I would probably go EVR. He's your safest of the bunch. I would say has the highest floor of all players. But at the same time, maybe him or Dunlop, right, would be tied for highest ceiling. So I would go with EVR, right? Similar ceiling to Dunlop, right, which I think is top 10 potential in this event. But EVR has a much higher made cut equity than Dunlop for sure, than Mav for sure, even Rogers. And then Hubbard is a little bit of a safer option too, right? He's got a really high floor, but maybe not as much upside, I would say, as a Dunlop or an EVR. So answer for me is EVR there. Does the Patreon include bets? So yes. So if you're part of the DFS tier, that's where you can get my outrights. So that's where I post all my outrights as I place them to give you guys an idea of that. I can only bet on Hard Rock Bet, so I'm kind of limited from that perspective. But if you're talking about the prop side, there's an entire prop tier for that too. So DFS is what you get here on this spreadsheet, which you can see my bets on there, right? Outright/bets over there in that one column. The prop tiers, if you want like underdog, prize picks, pick 6 kind of stuff. So kind of depends on what you're looking for. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know, man, and I'll get to you. What's going on? How about Dirty Dean Burmester? Well, I absolutely love Dirty Dean Burmester. So what is he? $7,000 on this kind of slate. A player actually talked up in my video already. So I'll give you the Spark Notes version, but I have a much more detailed version out of my YouTube there on Monday. Love the guy. Can playing well and live, fits the golf course, right? We want power off the tee. We're also hoping to get some sort of long iron play. And at Live Miami, he showed that, right? The Blue Monster, a course that I've played before over 30 times at this stage, where I'm very familiar with it. If you can't hit a long iron, you have absolutely no chance. And he went out there and crushed the field when it came to some of his long iron play. So yeah, $7,000 to Burmester, top 10 I got for him at plus 900. So I wouldn't bet him outright, but yeah, that plus 900 and that DFS exposure I really like. Ben Griffin thoughts. I worry about the off the tee play. I'm really looking at distance this week. I mean, it is probably my number one key stat. Like normally it's approach play. This week, distance is almost a prerequisite for what I'm taking. So that's my only worry. But in general, a really just solid player, right? Somebody that at most golf courses can still get it done. Even at tracks like Torrey Pines, right, can go out there and grind out a cut. So I don't think that he's completely out of play. Like I think that he has some made cut equity. In fact, compared to a lot of other guys priced around him, he has more made cut equity. But I worry about the ceiling because of the skill set. Like it's just such a long golf course that you wonder if he can set up enough birdie looks, right? Unless he's just so clean with it, right? He hits so many fairways out there that he just like bores the golf course to death, right? Just doesn't go out there and make many bogeys. But that feels like a really tough range of outcomes, at least to me. What's going on with Wyndham Clark? I love him this week. I bet him outright. So he's going to be low owned. I've got him at 11.4%. So I'm going to expand on him in just a few minutes. So I'll leave the rest of that for that. Injuries we should look out for. Well, Hideki with the neck. That's one. I'll give you my thoughts on him. I'm still playing Hideki. I know I'm sick after him withdrawing last week. Yeah, I'm playing Hideki. And then Aberg would be the other one. And he mentioned it today in his presser. He said he's fine. He's going to play, be good to go. That there's no pain, but it's uncomfortable, that there's some swelling out there on his knee, which is why he withdrew from I forget exactly which event it was, but it's from his last withdrawal was because of that. What's going on? Appreciate the content. Appreciate you. What are my thoughts on the apparent injury with Dickey? So I'm not sure who Dickey is. Maybe it's Ricky. And if it's Ricky, I'm not sure that he was injured. What's going on, Jason? You know, I've been to a lot of tournaments. This will be your first. Better to post up or follow a specific group. So I've got something better for you, Jason. So this is what I do for every Thursday, Friday round. So it kind of depends on when you're going. If you're on Saturday, Sunday, I'll follow a group, right? And especially the leaders, right? Maybe I'll follow like the first 3 groups, kind of just hover around that part of the golf course. There are certain PGA Tour events where they have holes kind of like side by side that are perfect for that. So if you're in Saturday, Sunday round, kind of like lingering around that part of golf course where you can go from hole to hole really quickly is super clutch, right? So for example, if you've got 9 down going down one way and then 10 coming back the other, like you have at a lot of courses, you stand right in between the two, right? And you get to see all that action. That's what I do Saturday, Sunday. It's how I get to see the most golf. Thursday, Friday, it's a completely different strategy. I normally just walk backwards on the golf course and just walk into a million different groups, right? So unless there's like a group of like Jordan Spieth, JT, 2 guys I absolutely love, I'll normally just hover around the entire time. So, you know, I love the scrubs out there. I love the toasties, right? Your 5K players in this kind of field. So especially someone like myself, I'm sure yourself too, right? If you're playing fantasy golf, can appreciate, right, some of your lesser known players out there. So I would say just make sure you're walking against traffic so that you're not trying to keep up with a group, right? If you're walking against traffic, you're going to see groups twice as fast because you're walking against them and you're walking towards you. So you're going to get to see a lot more golf and a lot more groups if you go that way. So that's definitely what to do Thursday, Friday is unless you want to follow a group. Hey, if you're a real big fan of a player, go for it, right? What's going on, Neil? Who's my favorite cheap player? We'll talk about a few, Neil, and I'll let you choose between them. So they're going to be like 4 or 5 of them. How are we feeling about Pendrith? A little chalky, but fits the golf course in really good form, and I'm playing them. Good evening. What's going on, Angelina? Jonathan says, thoughts on Spieth? His off the tee shots gained have been looking good lately. So I would say that he's way out of form. If you're going to him in any sort of conviction play, I would have a lot of pushback against that. The other thing I would say is that the off the tee play has looked a lot better. You're right about that. But everything else has been horrible, right? Approach play, he's losing. He's losing around the green, which is really surprising for Spieth. So even as somebody that's a huge fan that's normally kind of calling to play Jordan Spieth, I'm not the biggest fan. Now, am I playing him DFS? Yes. Would I bet him outright or take him as a core play, somebody in like 30% of my lineups? No, right? I'm more so going to be at like 20% mark, which is still going to be about 3x leverage to the field. But I'm also a huge fan of the guy. So it's a tough scene. I would say if you're going to take him, be careful, right? You know what you're getting into. He needs this for the Grand Slam, so that it's going to be a lot of pressure on him too. Benny Ann, thoughts? Really good form, good course fit with the length and the long irons. Unfortunately, super chalky. So I have a few more thoughts on him later, so we'll talk about that then. Great breakdown on Ben Griffin, of course. He's out of your pool now. Yeah, if I was playing cash, I think I'd really consider him, but not for like large field GPPs. What do I think? Why do I think, or do I think you're saying Benny Chalk's gonna be chalky? I do. Yes. So Benny Ann ownership. Let me go to the other tab real quick and give it to you. Yes, I do think he'll be chalky. So the question is how chalky? I think a lot of that will depend on what contest that you're entering. If you're in a single entry, a higher dollar contest, I think he might be 20% plus owned. So I think he might be like one of the chalkiest guys on the slate. Large field GPP, I've got him at 12.9%. So a little bit more reasonable in the large field GPP, but in general, yeah, pretty chalky, especially compared to guys around him. Thoughts on Minwoo Lee? I would say I'm at a 6 out of 10 on him. I think he's got a lot of upside, but a really low floor. So if you're in a GPP contest, it makes some sense to play a Minwoo. But if you're in a cash contest, if you're in one of your single entries, especially like a higher dollar single entry, I would be a little bit more hesitant, right? It would just be bringing on a lot of risk. Oh, the injury status of Matsuyama, you're saying. Okay. Oh, I hear you now. Yeah, I actually haven't heard much. So if anyone has better knowledge than I do, let me know. 1 second, guys. But I heard that he was out there practicing, so he's probably good. I heard that it was a little bit more precautionary. It was the one quote that I did hear this week, but nothing definitive. and I believe nothing directly from him. I think that was through his camp that said that it was a little bit precautionary. Looks like Cole got 15th here last year, but the recent form is So different golf course, right? So golf course was Oak Hill last year for the PGA Championship. I worry about the off the tee play, right? A little bit of a sprayer, not the longest off the tee. So, if you're just going for a long shot, right, there's going to be a few short guys that still get there this week. The issue is that there's probably 70, 80 short guys in the field, right? I'm just talking lower half players in terms of driving distance, and maybe 2 of them get there, right? Whereas, you're going to have 8 to 15 guys that are the longer players that get there. So, yeah, I would probably be a little bit hesitant there myself. One guy that seems to make lineups work is Grayson Murray. So, yeah, in projections, really like him. So one thing I noticed, Laser, especially looking at other sets of projections, not necessarily my own, was that he was rating out really well, especially in some of like the more popular sites. So what that's going to do is that's going to inflate his ownership as somebody that the optimizer is spitting out for people. So I think he's going to, I have it about like 1.5% ownership, I believe. Maybe just a little bit lower than that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's like 2-3% out, because a lot of the projections love the guy. Would I play Minwoo over Hideki? I would not. I would rather have Hideki. So speaking of, let's talk about some guys I like here. So we're going to not just go through some of my plays, but also rate the thought process and some of the ownership to keep an eye on. In terms of your highest owned player, that is Scotty Scheffler. That is a right that he has frankly earned at this stage, and 24.2% is too low. I think he should be 50% owned. In fact, I think you can make an argument that he should be one of the guys that is like closer to 55, 60% owned, even in this kind of field. And at least to me, that's like his hit rate, right? This guy is like a top 5 rate that's almost minus money on a lot of sports books out there. And the only concern, or at least there's 2 of them, I should say. One, the baby, right? How much has he practiced? How much has he played over the last few weeks? I would venture he has not played very much. Does that matter? Probably. But does it matter enough for him not to win this event? I guess we'll see, right? I'm hoping so for the sake of my outrights, for the sake of my Brooks outright, my Wyndham Clark one, but smart money would say that he's got a pretty good chance to win this golf tournament. In fact, so much so that I almost just bet him outright. It didn't take anyone else. But for DFS, this is where I'm going to get my exposure. I'm going to be playing him in about 50% of my lineups this week, which is about 2x leverage to the field when it comes at a 24.2% ownership number. So I think that the $13,000 price tag is fair, especially when we have a 5K range to work with. And though it's going to limit you as a second man in, right? There's no 9K guy as your second man in when you're taking a Scotty Scheffler. Actually, I was building around a little bit. You can actually go Scotty, Brooks in a few builds. I love Brooks this week, guys. So I'm trying to play him as much as humanly possible. You can actually make that work. It's tough, right? You're going to have to completely avoid the rest of the top end of the board. It's going to be like all 5, 6, and maybe 1 7K guy down there to round out that lineup. But you can make those lineups work. And now it's not great. It's not optimal, right? You're taking 2 guys up top and then essentially 4 punts. But if you want to go with some crazy combinations up top, you can make them work. So I think the more realistic options, right, are going to go Scotty, maybe drop down to the 8K range, take 2 7K guys, maybe 1 5K. And then I'm not exactly sure where that would put you salary-wise, but it wouldn't be all that crazy for a last man in. I think it'd be like a 6K guy, maybe a top end of the 6K guy to go out there and round out that kind of lineup. That's very realistic out there if he wins this golf tournament. So, the baby news, that narrative, right, is going to run rampant. That's not why I like Scotty Scheffler. I like him because he's won 4 of his last 5 starts. I like him because he's posting the kind of shots gained metrics that we've literally never seen before, right? Tiger, his run, all of those wins, great. We didn't have the shots gained metrics to back that up, right? Particularly the approach stats, all of that nonsense. This is the best run of golf that we've ever seen statistically. And frankly, that's why I said that he should probably be about 50% owned this week. So $13,200, give me that all day. And I mentioned that on my DFS preview on Monday, but I wanted to reiterate it here. I've played him in every event that he's played in this year, and I think all but once he's been optimal. Like at this stage, why wouldn't you play Scotty Scheffler based on how he's playing? I guess I understand if you think the baby's that big a deal, like maybe you do avoid him out there, but I have a hard time thinking that it's going to be that big of a problem for him. 1 second here, guys. Let's see. Any Scotty takes down there? Got to talk about the GOAT Tiger. Yeah, we will, for sure. First round leader. I don't think it's a great slate for it, but let me simmer on that one a little bit, and I'll get back to you. I'm not quite sure, honestly. Let's talk about Jon Rahm a little bit. So Rory McIlroy also getting a lot of ownership. So if you're worried about the ownership with Scotty, Rory's about 23% owned himself. So also, right, getting quite a bit of attention. The pivot play up top is Jon Rahm, right? Xander still about 15, 16%. You can see Brooks, right? I've got him at 15.8%. Jon Rahm's the lowest owned player, and I think that is completely disrespectful. And some people look at his live record and go like, oh, he hasn't won once right here in 2024. How could you think that he could win a major? The guy has finished top 10 in every single live event. And I think in all but one of them, he's finished top 5. I mean, the guy is an absolute machine. Even at golf courses that don't really fit his game, right? More plotter golf courses that they played for a lot of the Asian golf tournaments out there in the live tour, like the courses in Japan, whatever the hell they were playing over there, like the Australian course, right, wasn't really like a bomber sort of golf course. All those ones that were outside the United States, right, weren't really this kind of setup, right, ones that really set up well for Jon Rahm, and he was still top 5ing like it was nothing, and he didn't even look like he had his best stuff. He wasn't putting particularly well. He looked really frustrated out there on the golf course, and continually was finishing top 5. So some people will look at that as a negative, right, the fact that he doesn't have a win. Some, if anyone, I would say, with a brain out there would realize that he's number 1 on that tour in shots gained per round. He's number 2 in the overall points list. He's a player that has been unbelievably consistent and is still probably one of the best players in the world. So if you're telling me that we're getting a sub 15% on Jon Rahm, it's an automatic jam spot. I don't care if I love Xander. I wanted to play Xander this week. He was one of my top end plays for sure. But when I see Jon Rahm at 10, 11, 12% ownership, like I'm going to be a huge buyer right there. So $11,400, I think a no-brainer given his upside out there in this field. And even compared to Brooks, like Jon Rahm is almost always at better winning odds than Brooks Koepka is at live events. Like it's not even close. Like Jon Rahm is always like plus 500 to win these live events. Like Brooks is normally like 15, 20 to 1. I know that major championship Brooks is a thing, but how the hell is nobody respecting Jon Rahm here? I just think that, the live narrative has gone too far. We've seen that people have a hard time playing these live guys. And when you've got the narrative central up top with Rory, Scotty, when you've got guys like Brooks coming in, defending his crown, Xander coming in with some of the best form in the world, that's all the reason why he's getting squeezed. But don't forget about Jon Rahm, right? One of the most fiery competitors out there in the PGA Tour. And frankly, I still think the second best player in the world, right? Number 1, Scotty. Number 2 for me is Jon Rahm. Number 3 for me is Brooks. 4, then we get Rory. A lot of that's because of his clutch performing. And hey, maybe he wins the PGA and completely shakes that this week. I'm rooting for him, especially with his personal troubles. But that's the way that I look at this pecking order up top, right? So if my second best player in the world is the lowest owned guy up top, like that's a no-brainer for me to get to. So that's my thought process. Again, if you're looking for a pivot up top, the only one really is Jon Rahm. Everyone else is at least 15%, and both of these top-end players are over 23% ownership. Down here in this 10, 9K range, ownership gets a little bit more spread out. So guys like Aberg are about 10% ownership. I've got Morikawa at about 11% ownership himself. Guys like Cantlay, Cam Smith are sub 10% ownership. So there are some pivots to be had down here. The opportunity cost, though, is that they're expensive, right? And for going up $500 to $1,000 more, you can get guys with legit win equity, like guys that are just much better in terms of the outright odds. So if you're trying to pack in as much of that win equity as possible, it makes you avoid these sort of players. Now, where the ownership starts to tick back up would be with the Max Homa. I have him at about 12% ownership. Bryson, you can see I have him here at 14.4%. Even Wyndham Clark, right, over 10% himself, is slightly higher owned than some of these mid or even higher end of the 9K guys. But a lot of that is just their price tag, right? Like a Cantlay at $10,000, a Cam Smith at $9,800 don't look great in your lineups. But because of the pricing, again, you got to remind yourself that this is a different week because you have that 5K range. This kind of price tag is no longer as bad. Like this kind of price tag is what we'd normally see on a main site at like $9,300, $9,400, right? You probably have to adjust your price tags on almost all your top end guys by $500, $600, which means that these guys would normally be like mid 9K players, right? And when you look at it that way, it's not as bad of a price tag, right? It's a little bit easier to fit these guys into lineups than you'd imagine. So I think there's some upside to taking these sort of guys. So a few of my favorites, I know we didn't have them on here as a highlighted play, like Morikawa, Cam Smith, right? Kind of stand out to me as high upside major championship winners that could go out there and peck off one of these PGA championships. And it wouldn't be that mind blown, right? Players that have kind of been tested under the fire before, players that are good long iron players, right? Cam Smith, same thing with Colin Morikawa. That's kind of what they're known for. There are pivots to be had, in my opinion, over here. And again, a range that looks a little bit expensive, but part of that is just the pricing because it goes down to $5,000. Down here in the 9K range, lower end of the nines, I should say, Bryson makes sense. Just, this golf course is built for Bryson. So I think a lot of people have touted him up this week. I probably don't have to be like the 500th take that you've heard this week on why to play Bryson. But if you need the Spark Notes version, long off the tee, good long iron player, has shown up in a lot of the majors lately. So why not here at a golf course that fits his game? Already had the Wyndham talk, but low owned. Only 11.4%. That is great to see for some of your large field GPPs. And then down here in the 8s and lower 9Ks, you have a lot of low-owned options once again. So guys like Jordan Spieth unowned, right? Even guys like, let's say, Matt Fitzpatrick, Will Zalatoris, Victor Hovland are all sub 10% ownership. So once again, if you're looking for pivots, there are plenty to be had here, but don't feel like you have to force yourself into pivots, right? So the conversation I want to have at this stage, right, is we've talked about, the Cantlays, right? I mentioned, like, I'm not playing Cantlay this week, but like he's an option as a pivot, right? Cam Smith, all these guys that are going to be sub 10%. Don't feel like you have to play all these guys. In fact, if you took one or two of them and mixed them into a few lineups, that's probably the way to go about it, right? A lot of these chalkier players down here are truthfully just some of the better plays. So to give you an example, right, I mentioned Bryson, right? He is, in fact, the highest owned player down here in this range. Joaquin Niemann getting some attention too. That doesn't mean that you have to fade all of those kinds of players. So just to give you an idea, I have like Joaquin Niemann at like, I think 12, 13% ownership. Like, sure, he's, compared to a 7-8% owned Hovland, right? Same thing with Zalatoris. He's, 5% higher owned. You have plenty of other spots to differentiate, right? And it's not like you're taking a mega chalky player with taking Joaquin Niemann. Like, don't feel like these guys that are like 7-8% are must plays out there in your GPP lineups. Like, you mix in one or two of them into your player pool. I think that makes some sense. But a majority of your guys down here should be at average ownership, if not high ownership up top. The chalk up top tends to be some of the more accurate chalk that we have. And like Scotty, I think, is the best example of that. But you can say that about a lot of the players up here, right? Like Brooks getting attention. But, I think fading Brooks at a major is a fool's errand. You say the same thing about Bryson now these days, right? With how he's been playing. There are, spots up here that I'm willing to take at ownership because I'm differentiating down low, because I know I'm going to be doing that at the bottom end of the pool. In terms of a AK option, we'll have the Hideki talk. I mentioned that we'd expand on it here, but he's low owned. Apparently, it was just precautionary when it came to the neck. So why not take a shot on a guy who, in my modeling, he's the number 5 ranked player at number 21 in the pricing, right? So in terms of just modeling compared to pricing is one of the best values on the board. Why not take a shot on the guy that no one will play? Now, could he withdraw? Sure, right? That's why I'm not playing him in 30% of my lineups, right? That's why I'm taking him closer to 20% of my exposure, but 20% is nearly 3x the field at a 7% ownership projection, which would be huge out there for GPPs. He fits a difficult track well. He's one of the best, if not the best, long iron player that we have in golf. We saw that at the Genesis. We saw that at Pebble Beach, right? Him play really well with the long irons. So why not out here at a similar type of golf course? So yeah, I knew we'd have this talk. That's why I wanted to have him on here as a highlighted play. Only play Hideki if you're okay with him withdrawing. Like, you say the same thing about him pretty much every time you play Hideki. Last week when he withdrew, I was not surprised, right? Like, I had him 33% of my lineups last time. We went out there and completely burned those. I knew that was a possibility. Now, I would say that withdrawal was a little bit out of nowhere, right? We hadn't really heard about the neck for quite a while, so it stung a little bit more than the others. But if you play the guy, just know that is a possibility. So it's tilting. It's part of the process, but that's also why the ownership is only going to be at like 7% this week. Down here in this 7 6K range, especially the 5K range, is where I'm really trying to take pivots. So a DJ is going to come in handy, but a few guys that I'll point out that are going to be higher owned. Benny Ann, I already told you, right? He's going to be pretty chalky down there. Terrell Henn, surprisingly, getting some ownership. Sahith Theegala is always chalky, just a fan favorite that everyone loves to play. Down here in the 7Ks, Corey Connors getting some attention. Not enough to keep me off of him, though. I'm still playing him despite that ownership. You've got a few guys down here that are like 7-8%. So Burmester, Jaeger are actually some of your higher owned players down here in the 7s. But again, not chalky enough to keep me off of them. Really, other than like the top end of the 7s, where you have like a Benny Ann that's kind of egregiously chalky. Who else? A Siwoo Kim, right, is starting to get pretty nasty with the ownership too. I think really the place that you have to get different, in my opinion, is the top end of the 7K range here, and then with maybe one spot in this 8-9K range. So that's what I meant by like some of the pivots here make sense, but you don't have to take all pivots up top, right? Like your lineups don't have to start pivot, and then pivot down there in the 7s. If you take one pivot with one of your top 3 spent up options, and then, make sure to avoid some of this chalk down here at the top end of the 7s, I don't think it's going to be that hard to build lineups, right? I would also include Had and Theegala in the quote unquote top end of the 7K range, right? Even though they're actually at the bottom end of the 8s, because outside of those 4 or 5 guys that I mentioned, there's not that much that you actually have to worry about. So ownership's pretty spread out, right? It's because we have such a deep and strong field. I think a lot of us forget the fields before Live Golf, right? When we have the guys like Haddon to choose from, the Patrick Reeds, the DJs, the Cam Smiths, that matters, right? That's why ownership is more spread out. I heard a few people talking about it earlier this week, kind of confused about why the case was, right? Why ownership was so spread out. It's because of the deeper field, right? Because there are more options that are actually playable that can win this golf tournament. And it's also why the outright odds kind of reflect that too. So I think a week that is easier to get different on because there are just more viable options to choose from. So hopefully that gives you an idea of strategy. In terms of plays down here in the 7K range, Taylor Gooch at $7,600. You're giving me the player that's top 3 over there on the Live Tour, a player that is a really good long iron player, accurate off the tee. Maybe not the bomber that I'm hoping for, but he's not a slouch when it comes to the driving distance, a player that I'll get over the field on. Steven Jaeger, really good long iron player. Also, super long off the tee. So checks the 2 main boxes I'm looking for. Cam Davis, same thing. Long off the tee, really good long iron player. And you guessed it, Kurt Kitayama, long off the tee, really good long iron player. So surprise, right? He's in my player pool. David Puig, if you're not familiar, get to know him now. He's going to be around for quite a while. Reason why you don't know him, he started his professional career on the Live Tour, which is quite a decision, right? You have zero real way to kind of make a name for yourself over there, but he has 2 wins on the Asian Tour this year. He has a bunch of top 5, top 10 finishes over there on Live, which, some people will talk shit about the league, but for David Puig, young kid, I think he's like 21, 22 years old, to be constantly finishing top 10 over there and beating some of the world's best players, it is impressive as hell. So I'll try to look at it without being biased, right? Without looking at it as like, oh, the Live Tour sucks. Realistically, they have a lot of the best players in the world over there. So, if somebody's playing well, that counts for something. So now, does it count for as much as it would on the PGA Tour? No, right? Fields are smaller. It's much easier to top 10, obviously, right? If the fields are smaller, there's no cut too. So they have that going for them. Only 3 rounds, right? So there's differences, but good golf is good golf, right? And good golf translates regardless of the tour that you're playing on. Also want to point out Rasmus Højgaard, maybe the best player on the DP World Tour this year. So for him to be $5,700 is an absolute crime. And I thought he'd be chalky. Like, this guy is playing some really good golf this year, and he's 1.5% owned. So I know somebody asked me about the cheap play that's my favorite. It's Rasmus Højgaard. In fact, for first round leader, if he was AM, I would say that he'd be my favorite first round leader bet, because he absolutely nukes to start off golf tournaments. The amount of 18-hole leads that Rasmus Højgaard has had on the DP World Tour is absolutely disgusting. And if he's not in the lead, he's normally at least like maybe 1-2 shots off the lead at the very most. Luke List, another bomber that's good with the long irons. Surprise, surprise. I'm playing him in the player pool. Jordan Smith, long, really good with the long irons, right? Surprise, surprise too. And then finally, Alejandro Tosti, that same sort of player, right? Bomber type, really good with the clubs from 175 plus, are the sort of cheap plays that I'm taking. And, a Tosti at $5,500, That is a ton of salary savings. Jordan L. Smith, you guys already know I liked him from the video we did earlier, but guys like a Luke List or Rasmus Højgaard, like are players that if we were just in like a normal event, right, with pricing from $12,000 down to $6,000, in a normal field, these kind of guys would be like $7,500. Like Rasmus Højgaard would be a borderline 8K player at just like your run-of-the-mill PGA Tour event. Now, this event's a lot deeper, right? That's why he's priced cheaper, but $5,700 is just way, way too cheap for a player of his upside. So a major championship's a huge step up in talent level, right, compared to the DP World Tour. But, you know, I'm sure all the DP World Tour guys out there that know about Rasmus and see him at 1.5% are probably just wanting me to shut the hell up right now because I'm spilling the beans on the guy that's really, really good. But hey, I care about you guys out there. I want my subscribers, I want the guys watching here on YouTube to go out there and have a good week. So we'll spill the beans on a play like him. Let's see. Let's catch up on chat. Then we're going to build a lineup together and then go through props. So props will be going on in about 5 minutes. We're going to try and make this quick right here. But we'll go over all your questions, and then afterwards we'll go through some of that. The prop stuff. Where are we at? Let me get a sip of this too. I have a lot of comments to catch up on. So the 5 minutes might be a little bit ambitious. It might take me 10 minutes to get through this year. Thoughts on Kashmir Keith? So he's one of my value plays, actually. So if you want my full take on it, check out my video that I put out on Monday. But a long player off the tee, really good long iron player. So yeah, just the prototypical kind of guy I'm looking for this week. So number 9 in my total mono ranking, despite being number 57 in the pricing, is an absolute steal. Who is the one guy I'm playing in single entry? The one guy I'm playing in single entry is Brooks Koepka. Just can't avoid it. Top tier player, I think, wins this golf tournament. Got to talk about the GOAT. Let's do it right now, right? So Tiger Woods, Eldrick Woods, whatever you want to call him, the GOAT, right? For lack of a better term, probably not a good play this week. Right? I mean, let's be honest. He's at best probably finishing in like 20th. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. Frankly, I think one more time, I think we're going to see him compete at a major championship. This is probably not the best golf course for it, right? Couple reasons why. Soft course, harder to walk. Main reason, the length, right? Obviously, at his age, he can still move it quite a ways, but he doesn't quite have the same kind of strength and the ball speed, for that matter, of a lot of your other players. So he's the GOAT. I'll be rooting him on just like everyone else. I'll be rooting for him pretty much more than anyone else. But just in terms of my money, smart thing to do would be to avoid him. Who is my first round leader? Just to kind of circle back on that one. If I was going to go with a first round leader, I want it to be an AM tee time. And I would like these 7 AK guys are the kind of players I'd be looking at. So depending on the number, DJ is probably worth a few looks. These Jaeger types, I think, are the kind of players I'd be looking at. A Corey Connors even, right, could potentially be a first round leader. My favorite option out of the bunch is DJ. Maybe he goes out there, torches the golf course. He's one of the streakiest players that we have, which is kind of what you want for like a first round leader bet. Let's see, Scotty, maybe a hand. I would go AM guys. So, hey, Scotty can still do it out of the PM wave, but he might have a slightly harder golf course. How much do I think the colder weather will affect scoring? And you're talking about Thursday morning? I think a little bit, right? Especially the early starters. If you're starting at 7 a.m. before it really heats up, it probably affects you around. But if you're talking about like an 8 o'clock starter, right, that maybe only 1-2 holes is played in the cooler weather, probably doesn't affect it at all. And if you're talking about a late starter, so like 8:30, 9 a.m., not at all, right? Because it's going to be 60, 65 degrees by then. So it's a bigger effect when it gets down to like 40 degrees or like even like down to the 50s. But at least let me double check that. So it's going to be at 7 a.m. tomorrow. It's going to be 58 degrees. Like that's pretty mild, right? Obviously, you'd rather it be 70 degrees. Like it's going to be from 10 a.m. onwards, but only your earliest starters, I would say, are really going to be affected. Keegan or Kitayama seems to land in that low 7K range a lot. I'd go Kitayama, but I like both. I'm playing both this week. But if you made me choose, Kitayama. Will be good to see how Nakajima gets on this week. You backed him at 9-1 for a top 20. Hell of a talent, right? Didn't he get like, maybe I'm imagining something, but didn't he get like hit by a golf ball or something recently? Maybe I'm completely thinking of the wrong guy, but didn't he like get whacked in the head or something a few weeks ago? If so, hopefully he's feeling better now. Upper 6K range, you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's easy to say that, right, when the pricing is so different this week. But yeah, I knew what you were saying. Yeah, Rahm's a power hitter. That's true. If he can get hot, it could be scary. It comes down to the putter, I would say. He's not been putting that well on Live Tour, but you never know. Maybe he gets it flipped. Thoughts on Hovland? He had a decent round 4 last year. I would say, you mean last event, sorry, not last year. And yeah, you're right. Even round 3 was pretty decent for him. He went out there, had a very clean round out there for moving day. I would say things are moving in the right direction. He also has his old coach back. Who was it? Mayo, that he's back with in terms of a swing coach, which is huge. So in the future, in general, I am really bullish on him, right? I mean, I mentioned last week, the love for Victor Hovland out there. That continues this week. I'm not 100% sold we're going to see it, but if he comes back, a lot of that is probably because of the new coach. So I think that he's a decent option, that's for sure, especially for like the next month or so. I think you're just going to see him get better and better. And maybe this week's a little bit early to the Hovland train, but I think if you're patient with it, 1-2 events from now, you might even go out there and win the damn thing. This week's probably a little bit early. I honestly debated betting him outright at 40-1, but I held off on it. I just think it's a week early for him. Thagala's interesting. You worry about the putter. With Bryson, you're saying Bryson's a really good putter, so I don't worry about the putter. And if you're talking about that with Thagala, you might be talking about somebody else. But yeah, Thagala, Bryson, really good putters, though. Thoughts on Batia and Denny McCarthy? You write up that Batia won the boys PGA Championship here. He did. Yeah, the junior PGA Championship was won by Akshay Bhatia here. Now, completely different course. They play the front tees for the junior PGA Championship. So I don't know if I'd look into it too much, but I do like Akshay this week. Really good off the tee player, really good long iron player. So more than just the narrative, fits this golf course and this kind of player that I'm looking for. If players get into the second tier rough, would this result in a layup or a punch out? I think so. So the main rough is only 4 inches long. Maybe it's like 4.5 inches long as the week has gone on. The rough you're talking about, right, is the rough that's like 10 yards further out. So if you're not familiar with how this works, let me see if I can bring this up. 1 second, guys. Let me bring up the PGA site and just show you from like the shot tracker view what I'm talking about. The rough at this golf course is what we call graduated rough. So what they do is they essentially make the rough get longer the further away from the hole that you are, or further away from the fairway, I should say, that you are on any given golf hole. So to give you an example here, here's hole number 1. You'll see that to the left, you have all this green, right? Now, the first like 5-10 yards is about 4-inch rough, which is pretty nasty stuff, right? It's like what we get at the Arnold Palmer. So it's going to be tough if you get into that stuff. Outside of that, it gets to like 5-6 inches. And then this yellow stuff that you see is no-go zone. That is what we call the hay around this kind of golf course. The hay is about a foot long, sometimes longer than a foot long literal hay that you have out there on the golf course that leads to lost balls, pretty much automatic punch outs with the wedge. The intermediate cut is what the question is about. I would say that it's going to depend on your lie, right? If you're in that like 5-6 inch rough, if you get a good lie, you could probably still hit the green. If you get a bad lie, you're probably hacking out, like you said. So just wanted to point that out for people that maybe didn't see my course preview, but it's a kind of weird one when it comes to the rough. We'll have to see how it plays out. A lot of players were saying that it looked easier than they expected, but we'll see if that rough gets more gnarlier as the week goes on. Yeah, exactly. You have to be about 20 yards off to get into the really deep stuff. Drop some knowledge about Jordan Smith. So he's pretty consistent player on the DP World Tour. Flusher off the tee, flusher with the irons. So the kind of guy that pretty decent plays. You like all the live guys this week. I don't like all of them, but yeah, I like a decent amount of them. That's for sure. Especially up top. The players that have proven themselves in majors before are guys that are hard to avoid, right? How do I handicap the live players? By watching, and they also have shots gained metrics that they've put out. Now, they don't put them out all the time. They're not 100% reliable, but they give you a pretty good idea of how they're playing. So I have access to those numbers myself, what I use in my modeling for this kind of week. And then obviously just watching all the live events. I watch all of them, right? Just like I do for the PGA Tour. You took them in an 11-man draft, Minwoo that is, and switched them out for Hideki. Yeah, I like both of them, but, Hideki's probably the better player, right? So if you're getting a healthy Hideki, he's probably the better option. Can I rank the live guys after Rahm? So between Brooks, Bryson, and Joaquin, I would go... Oh, so you're saying the next 5 after those ones. So off the top of my head, I don't really just like know all the live players in the field. But Burmester, based on his play this year, has to be in that conversation. Taylor Gooch for sure, right, is one of those top end players too. So those are the two no-brainers I'd say. But, I don't know if I'd say Patrick Reed is. Patrick Reed has been a little bit inconsistent. Very inconsistent, I should say. Barak has not been that good over there in the Live Tour. I guess that's worth pointing out. Now, am I playing him this week? Yes. But he has not been that good on Live. Phil Mickelson's been absolute horseshit on Live. Lucas Herbert, for the most part, has been pretty shit himself over there on that tour. David Puig's been awesome. So, honestly, Puig would be in that top 5 of players after those top ones. So, Puig would be up there. And then any other Live guys that played down here? That's it for the guys off the top of my head. That's a tough question because if I had a list of the Live guys, I could figure it out. But, that's at least 3 of them right there. Any favorite birdie better matchups? So yeah, we're not talking props quite yet, but we'll definitely circle back to that question here in a few minutes. Brooks only $29. Yeah, I'm guessing that's on Fanduel or something like that, or Yahoo. That's kind of crazy. Most of the Live guys are $20 on Yahoo. Yeah, I saw that. You can build a lineup like Brooks, Bryson, right? I think is in the $20 range. It's a so here's the issue with that. The issue is the ownership is going to be through the roof on those kind of players. Isn't Puig on Rahm's team? He's not. So no, Puig is on the Fireballs, which is the all Latino team from different nationalities. So you got Mexican on the team. You've got a Spaniard on the team right out there with David Puig. He's not, but you'd think he would be, right? He's a Spaniard. Obviously, John Rahm's a Spaniard. But no, John Rahm's a Legion 13, who he has Terrell Haddon on his team. Also, Kieran Vincent. And who's the last one? Jeez Louise. I should know this, but someone else out there on their team. It's young kid, Caleb Surratt is the 4th one out there on his team. And then the Fireballs are Sergio, Abraham, Answer, I think, David Puig, and Eugenio Chikara is the 4th one. The live rosters are kind of hard to keep together, that's for sure. For 20 max, how many players am I taking in my poll? I haven't played a 20 max in years, but maybe 25 players. Yeah, Surratt. Yep, Surratt's on that team. Surratt, by the way, he'll probably be in these majors at some point, right? Because when he starts to play those Asian Tour events, goes out there, gets a few wins, he'll probably make these kind of fields too because he's a stud. He's playing really well out there in Live Tour. In fact, he was gaining 2 strokes to the field or something crazy like that, which is DJ and that kind of level stuff, just below Joaquin Niemann. So another sleeper pick, by the way, for one of the best Live players. He's not in this field, though. Thoughts on Taylor Moore? Really good form, fits the golf course well, so I'm all in on him. Gotta guard those hoes. Shout out DGen75. Yep, the hoe guard, right? That's where you're getting that from? Yeah, shout out to DGen75. He's got some really funny takes, that's for sure. Hit that like button to get our little nuggies from our guy. Appreciate you, Byron, down there in the chat. And you heard the guy. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already. You took one team with his brother out of the 5. Couldn't blame you. I'm playing Nico too. Nico is an absolute boss. Don't hear me play anything about Grayson. I think I'm missing the party on Grayson because I've seen a lot of love for him, right? So he's super cheap. That's for damn sure. Let me see the shots gained metrics because that's got to be it, right? Let's see. M-U-R Murray, just like I forget his first name, but the tennis player Murray, right? So let's see, Andy Murray, right? Is that his name? But let's see, Grayson Murray's playing okay, right? He's gaining in 3 out of the 4 categories. He's $5,300, right? I mean, look at the guys he's priced around. I mean, I don't know who the hell Kazuma Kabori is. That seems like a made-up name, if we're being frank. Sammy Valimaki, that's an okay talent, but he hasn't done shit since he got into contention that one time. He's definitely the best of the bunch. I don't know if I Peter Monotti's down here. I think he's probably decent option too. Yeah, compared to the other slappies down here, he makes sense. And he's long off the tee. He's a good long iron player too. So I like Toasty, obviously, right? I mentioned him. Grayson Murray would be a damn good course fit too. So I like the way you're thinking, man. Judge just hit one to the moon. I am a low-key Yankees fan, so I like to hear that. I'm a bigger Pirate fan. So I root for the Pirates more, but okay, that's good to see. Thoughts on Jake Knapp? So Jake Knapp fits the golf course well if he can keep the ball on planet Earth. I like him more to Mexico Open, right? Vedanta Vallarta. I like him more at a golf course like the Byron Nelson, for example, where there's not much trouble you can get into, because when he misses, it is way offline. So what I worry about this week, right, is him getting into that second cut of rough, which is like 5-6 inches, or even out there to the hay on a few tee shots. So I like him for showdown more, right? Where maybe for an 18-hole sample, he can drive the ball a little bit more accurately. That feels like where you can capture that upside over a 4 rounds, right? Where he's going to have 72 holes to make that mistake. He's probably going to make a few doubles, right? That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking he's gonna hit a few lost balls into that hay, which is why Jordan Spieth, by the way, is also kind of tough at this golf course, because he's probably going to hit a few into that hay. Laser Guy, can you play Nikolai instead of Keegan and Kitayama or even Burmester? Yeah, Nikolai is a damn good play, that's for sure. Anyone know who Joe Mayo is? Yeah, that's Hovland's old coach, the one that got him to world number 1. So that's the guy that you want him with, essentially. Thoughts on Harmon? Everyone is saying that he won't even make the cut. I think that is an overreaction, right? I think I could definitely make the cut. Now, is it a golf course that emphasizes his game? It's not, right? It's a golf course that's long, right? He's not the longest player off the tee. He's a little bit shorter. He is a good long iron player, though, so it's definitely still within his range of outcomes to succeed. But do I think it's a great course for him? No. So I think that's where that sentiment's coming from, right? Is people are mentioning that it's going to be a little bit tougher for him to have that ceiling. But could he top 25? For sure. I mean, he top 25, he top 5 at one of the longest major championships ever. And that was the event they had at Erin Hills, which is a 7,800-yard golf course. Actually, I think maybe even 7,900 yards. Yeah, you could definitely go with that. In fact, maybe I will. I have one more bet that I want to place, and I think that first round leader is maybe not the worst market to go out there and fire it on, because I have a free $100 bet that I'm trying to place. So maybe it is on DJ for first round leader. Just checked with Nakajima, and he couldn't even see anything but a golf ball hitting him. Yeah, maybe I'm just thinking of somebody else, Jack, but somebody definitely got hit with a golf ball over the last few weeks. I believe DP World Tour, or maybe it was an Asian Tour event, which if it was DP World Tour, it probably wasn't Nakajima. Pick one, Knapp, Denny, or Taylor Moore. If I had to pick one, Taylor Moore. I like 2 of the 3, though. I like Knapp. I like Taylor Moore, though. I have to say Knapp, though, a little bit of a sketchier play, right? What do you think the winning score is going to be? As I've adjusted it, something like 18 under is what I'm expecting. Now, I would say 16 to 18 under is the range I'd give you. Does Shank have a game that fits here? Kind of. He's got the length for it, so he's got the first half, but he's not a really good long iron player. So I'd say like a 6.5 out of 10. I like the length. I like the putter. I like just the fact that he's a better player than a lot of guys priced around him. But I do worry about the iron play, which still matters at this course. You're not hearing much about List. Seems like he could be a sneaky pivot. I think so, right? That's kind of why I pointed him out here. The ownership is super low. Let me see what I have him at. I've got him at 2% ownership out there in my projections. Completely agree with you, man. Norman Worth playing. He's a bomber. I'm not playing him. I didn't think about it, actually. I kind of regret not looking more into him now. I actually haven't done a full deep dive on him, which I guess we'll just do it now, right? Better late than never. He's super duper cheap, if memory serves me correctly. Now, the issue is just how cheap is he? Is he like $5,200 or something? Yeah, so he's 5,300. The shots gained metrics still haven't come around, but he has been a little bit better lately than what we had in the past. The issue is the form. So if you're in a GPP and you're looking for a pivot, maybe as a flyer, but outside of that, I'd probably avoid him. Thoughts on Dietrich? Very long off the tee and solid short game. I like him for a GPP flyer. So kind of like Norman, a little bit of risk, but I do think he has upside. Thoughts on Soderberg? So I haven't been watching as much of the DP World Tour, so I'm maybe not the best person to ask about that. But let me see if I can bring up his results, because they're not going to show up on what we have here sharing. So let me go ahead and bring up I should have DP World Tour results to go through. So give me a second here. I just want to see how he's actually played. So Sebastian Soderberg, who he's really long off the tee if memory serves me correctly. So he's in play for this kind of week, that's for sure. Okay, so holy shit. Okay, so I'm not playing him this week yet, but now I'm highly considering it, Colin. And because I see why you're asking this question. here are his results. T3, second, 21st. Okay, I guess that's his bad result, right? T55, ooh, like, okay, that's not great. But T6, T9, T3 out there in December. I mean, holy crap. He's gaining 13, 14 strokes to the field. We have no shots gained breakdown, so we don't know how he's doing it over there on that tour. I don't have access to the DP World Tour stats, but holy, his ownership is non-existent too. If we were to take a look at the ownership, which I don't have him on here on this censored sheet, he's like sub 2% ownership. They're at $5,700. I know Rasmus has had a pretty good year, but I haven't watched as much DP World Tour lately. That is unbelievable. I didn't realize that he was on that kind of run over there on the DP World Tour. So I'm playing Rasmus. Now I really wish I was playing Soderberg too. In fact, there's a really good chance that I add him to my player pool because that kind of form is unbelievable. So yeah, I think he's a good pivot man. Do you have any favorite bets for the tournament? So yeah, I do. So I bet 2 outrights. So I bet Brooks to win at 14-1 this week. I have an outright, a future on him at 20-1. And then I bet Wyndham Clark at 40. So only 2 outright bets. I have a top 5 on DJ. I have a top 10 on Burmester, a top 10 on Keith Mitchell, and a top 10 on Jordan L. Smith. So hopefully that helps. Is a balanced build preferred this week or stars and scrubs? Stars and scrubs for me because I want Scotty. I want lineups with guys like Brooks Koepka. So yeah, more stars and scrubs because I want that top end win equity. Thoughts on Bryson long where he's got to be? Oh, that's a wild comment. I can't believe I didn't read it before saying that, but he's long off the tee. I'm not going to comment on anything else. And I got you, Brandon, of course. Let's talk about some first off lineup construction real quickly. We'll build a lineup together. And then afterwards, we're going to talk through all that prop stuff. So if you're here for all the averages, some of the prop slips, which first off, I already have a video out on my channel covering that. But for some of the takes since then, right, some of the props that they added on Prize Picks, the added green props, also fairy props, we have a little bit more that we can talk about here. So we're still going to have some prop talk to go through, but let's go ahead and build a lineup together first. So what I want to show you guys here is how doable it is to build Scotty lineups, right? So $13,000, I know looks like a hefty price tag, but it's really not so bad with a 5K range. So if we go ahead, throw Scotty in there, right? We know he's going to be in this build. Really, all you have to do is go down here to the 5Ks and then find one pivot, right? One guy that you're really saving that salary on, and then you open up all the room that you need for Scotty. So, really all that you have to do, if you're going to play Grayson Murray, you've done it right there, right? You're back up to $7,800. Even if you're going to be a little bit less crazy about it, right? Maybe spend a little bit more and take somebody that's like $5,600, like a Luke List. Like Luke List is oftentimes a 7K golfer, sometimes even like close to 8K, right? In a normal PGA Tour event, now he's $5,600. So there are legit guys down here that fit this course, right? That have plenty of length to take on a Valhalla that can make Scotty Scheffler lineups work. So just by taking one 5K guy, now we're up to $7,800. Right now we can actually afford to take an 8K player or even 1 or 2 of them as our second, third man in. So just for the sake of this, I'm going to be even more aggressive about it. I'm going to take a Joaquin Niemann as my second man in, and I'm going to take an 8K player and throw in a, let's go, DJ over there at $8,000. So with Scotty, right, we were still able to play an 8K and a 9K guy, and we're still at 6,900 remaining. Like this isn't even that bad, right? Because we go down to $6,900, we have plenty of legit golfers down here, right? In fact, this middle end of the 6K range has plenty of legit golfers. So whether it's a Denny McCarthy that you could throw in there, whether it's a Ryan Fox, Kitayama, right? I mentioned is one of my favorite players. You take him, you finish it off with somebody in the lower end of the 7s. In your lineup here, it's not like you're taking guys in the 5, 6K range that don't have legit top 10, top 20 equity, right? Like Kitayama won at the API, which is a similar ball striking test to what we're going to have this week. Luke List won at Torrey Pines, a golf course that is a very similar ball striking test to what we're going to have this week. And there are 2 value plays, right? So, this kind of lineup is a lot more feasible than I think most people realize. And, these 5K guys, I just have to say it, are like, they're going to be at least 2 of them that get there. They're going to be the guys that you have to have for the large field GPP. So up top, I could actually see being a little bit less aggressive with your exposures, like maybe taking more of a spread out approach for your 9, 10K plays, because down low is really where I think you're going to win or lose for this sort of week from GPPs, and where a lot of my focus has been all week. Thoughts on Kirk and Dean. So you might want to circle back a little bit. I give my full take on Dean also on my DFS preview. I have a full take on Dean. He's one of my value plays. So I love Dean. So check out my full thoughts earlier. But Chris Kirk, I worry about the off the tee distance. This is a course where driving distance, at least being an above average player when it comes to driving distance, is a prerequisite for my player pool. So I worry about that for him, man. Just really long golf course that's going to play even longer with all the rain that they've gotten. So probably something that I avoid. But that is all I've got for the DFS section, guys. If you're hopping on out of here, you're only here for DFS, go ahead and smash the like button before you leave. Also, make sure you stop on by for our round 2 through 4 live streams, which we'll be doing for all of the action throughout the weekend. So we'll be doing showdown stuff there for rounds 2 through 4, also prop content for rounds 2 through 4. So this live stream still isn't over, right? Still going to talk plenty about props over the next 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes here. But I know some of you guys just hop in for the DFS action. So if that's the case, right, salute to you guys out there. Still appreciate you guys. Only thing I ask is that you smash the like button on the way out of here. So let's hop into the prop side now, shall we? So if you're just joining us, which I know early on, right, a lot of the DFS guys are here. I know later on we get a lot of the prop people coming in. If you weren't here for the weather section, you didn't see my video today. Conditions for Thursday are super calm. I mean, sub 10 mile an hour winds pretty much the entire day, except from super early in the morning. You have 60 to 70 degree temperatures. So that's ideal, I would say, right? Anything higher would be maybe slightly preferable, like maybe 75 degrees. But at that point, you're just nitpicking. If you're taking a look at the averages from 2014, I think it's going to play on the easier end of the spectrum. So we were taking a look at some of the scoring before. You could see on Thursday, Friday, it played about a stroke over par. On the weekend, it played under par for the 2 rounds. That was also after a little bit of rain between Friday and Saturday out there in 2014. So with soft greens, right, they've gone rain heading into this event. Also next to no wind, it should play under par. Now, the course is longer now. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult on the greens now after some renovations, but I have a hard time thinking that's going to make a massive difference, right? There's improvements in technology that have happened since 2014. The golf balls just fly further now than what they did about 10 years ago. So though you added, right, a little bit of difficulty to the golf course, I don't think this thing is going to play way over par, right? Especially with no wind and especially with the fact that they've gone rain over the last 2 days. So I'm projecting for about an even par scoring average. I'm trying to be a little bit more conservative about it, right? Trying not to go too much in one direction with my projections. But even at even par, there's a lot of value to be had. So the reason why I say that I'm expecting an even par scoring average is back there in 2014, scoring average was 0.57 over, all right, over the 4 rounds. So about a 71.57. And over the weekend, it played under a 71 average. So just again, using the stuff from 2014, which is a little bit outdated, that's about the best guess that we can have. From a birdie average, it was 3.31 back in 2014. I think that'll be 3.5 plus, if not close to 4 per round, which with some of the props that we have out there is really important to note. The bogey average, though, I'm not sure it's going to move as much. Now, I think it'll go down a little bit, maybe closer to like 3.25 per round. But the bigger change, in my opinion, is going to be the birdies, because with all that receptiveness, I think you're going to be able to hit the ball a lot closer to the hole with long irons, which is, of course, key to going out there and setting up birdie looks. Fairway hit average might actually go up compared to 2014, and it was already relatively high at over 9 per round. And then your green and regulation average was just under 11 per round. So if you saw my content earlier, you'll know that Corey Connors prop ended up getting bumped, unfortunately. And a lot of these fairway props are getting bumped. So in my opinion, some of the best value that we had all week were on overs on fairways hit. So they had guys to start the week like Matt Fitzpatrick at 8 fairways. Now he's at 8.5 now. You would still have to think that's too low, because on Prize Picks, for example, Matt Fitzpatrick is at 9.5 fairways. So I already have in a bunch of exposure. In fact, I have no interest in adding more. I already have a shit ton of slips in out here for Thursday. But if I was adding stuff right now, it would be props like Matt Fitzpatrick over fairways. Now, am I going to get there myself? No, I'm not. Because I have, in my opinion, better props that I've already locked in, that have already been bumped a shit ton. And I guess to give you an example, like Scotty Scheffler, they had at 8.5 fairways. He's now at 9.5 fairways, right? So they bumped that an entire fairway. Guys like Tommy Fleetwood, I got at 8 fairways. I'm pretty sure Tommy Ladd is at like 9 or even 9.5 fairways at this stage. So a lot of the really good fairway hitters, right? Tommy Ladd's a top 5 player in driving accuracy. Scotty Scheffler, believe it or not, is a top 20 player on tour when it comes to driving accuracy, have already been bumped over a fairway. The spots that you can still find a little bit of value on are the ones that haven't moved, right? So I guess to give you a few examples, Max Homa has not moved yet. He's still at 8 fairways. Cam Young is also still at 8 fairways. And I'm not sure if either one has a projection. Actually, he does. Look at this. Cam Young's at 9.5 over here. And Max Homa, does he have a prop up? So yeah, Max Homa's over here at 9. So maybe the better value is on Cam Young. That's an entire fairway and a half discrepancy, but that's huge value, right? And if we go over here to Caesars, William Hill, they actually have odds up for some of this fairway stuff. So just to give you an idea, I'm pretty sure they had Cam Young up here. So it doesn't look like they have Cam Young up. The other prop, so I guess Max Homa, we could take a look at too, just for a little bit of perspective, I guess. Look, Max Homa, right? They have it 8.5, right? So 0.5 higher than his projection on underdog, and he's minus 165 towards the over. So even that would be quite a bit of value. Then when you consider that the Cam Young's an entire fairway and a half higher in Prize Picks, is where you can find some of that value. So I would go with some overs on fairways. In my opinion, with the soft conditions, the low winds, I think you're going to see guys hit about at least 9 fairways per round, if not closer to 9.5, even 10 per round. So it's a golf course where there's a lot of forced layups. If you saw my course breakdown, you'll see why so many people aren't going to hit drivers all day. I would say that there's at least 4 layup holes out there, if not more, depending on your driving distance. Let's see. So I guess Max Homa could be the other guy that you take, but I'm trying to see if there's any better options that you could take for fairways. So Cantlay is he posted on here? So no Cantlay fairway prop, it looks like. I'm trying to find another 1.5 discrepancy because, this 1.5 discrepancy on Cam Young is definitely really good value. Do they have a Joaquin Niemann prop up? Yeah, probably not. Niemann can kind of spray it, so I'm a little bit hesitant about that. Let's see. Aberg at 9, no thank you. I'm trying to only take guys that can hit fairways, right? I don't want to take somebody that's erratic off the tee. You could go over here to Matt Fitzpatrick, right? That's a 1 discrepancy, right? They have Matty Fitz at 9.5, but even that is really good value. So I think Matty Fitz you can mix in, a Max Homa, right? You could take for maybe a 2-man. Heck, you could even make it a 3-man if you wanted to. Now, like I said, I'm going to avoid this because, in my opinion, I think I just have better props that I locked in before that have already bumped, but those would be pretty solid options to mix in on that site. In terms of Prize Picks, a lot hasn't bumped over here. Now, I've had some stuff get removed out there, but a lot that also hasn't moved at this stage. So I guess just to go over a few that I really like. In terms of strokes props, I think this under on Rory makes a lot of sense. He's also at the same number on underdog, so you can also mix him in on that site. I also don't hate this under on Bryson DeChambeau. I'll talk about why here in a second. Just let me go ahead and find a few of these props that I'm mixing in. I took an under in Xander, but that already bumped 0.5. So I wouldn't recommend taking it at this stage. We're going to go with these 3 for the 3 that I shout out for this video here. So Rory McIlroy under 69.5, Bryson under 70, and DJ under 70.5. First off, all 3 have AM tee times. Second off, all 3 come in with form. Now, DJ, you could say, might have the sketchiest form of the bunch, but what I'm expecting to be about a 71 scoring average at the very worst, if not maybe even slightly better than that, right? Bryson to cover this has to gain like just over a stroke to the field. DJ to cover this has to gain like half a stroke to the field. And DJ, right, one of the top 20 players in the world on most people's rankings list, right, is a player that he's at least going to gain half a stroke to the field on average, right? If not closer to a stroke and a half like he's used to over the last few seasons. Somebody like Bryson, right, has been gaining like 2 strokes to the field in some of these major championships, right? If he goes out there and gains a stroke, right, I think it's like 1.3 strokes he's going to have to gain, right? He'd be able to get out there to 69 strokes, right? With a lot of push equity, it's at -1. Guys like Rory coming in off 2 straight wins, early tee time with low winds, receptive greens, to shoot -2, like it's really not asking all that much, right? Especially if I think the scoring average is going to be even par or even just potentially under par. So that can give you an idea of some of my exposure. There are some birdie props I'm mixing in. A bunch of those got removed. So actually on the video I did earlier today, we had a Max Homa at over 3.5 birdies, but that one got removed from the board. So that one, I guess, was too good a value for them to keep up there. This Xander prop, we had it 70 strokes out there in the video, right? That one got bumped as well. So don't be surprised to see these ones move too, right? I guess just to reiterate it, right? It was Rory, Bryson, and then who was the last one? Right, DJ over there for the 3-man play, these might move too. So I think the best place to be, right, kind of like I was saying for the PGA DFS stuff, is the Patreon page, right? Because I post all of these props as I'm taking them. So if you want to make sure you can get them before any of that live movement, make sure to check out the link in the description. But that's all I've got for my takes, right? I just wanted to go over a few of the props that I was mentioning before, and I guess give you a few replacements if you weren't able to catch the stuff on the video that bumped beforehand. Let's see. Thoughts on Cam Smith or Wyndham Clark? Wyndham, if you don't need a lot of leverage, right? He's still low owned too, so you're going to get some leverage there. If you're really chalky and you got to find a way to get different, then maybe you go Cam Smith. Philly says, what do I think about the 0.5 eagle prop for like a Bryson Scotty? So I got to see pin locations to give you an answer on that. So let me see if they've posted those yet, which they might have. So let's see. Because, yeah, they have. So I guess let's figure this out, huh? All right, so this is going to take a hot minute because I don't know whether the par 5s are. So there's a drivable par 4 kind of early. So it's this one, I think. At hole number 4. Let's look at the pin location. So hole 4 is in the front middle. So maybe there. You never know. Let's look at 7. 7 is the one that they can cut off. If you see this, by the way, if you didn't see my course breakdown, you can see there's 2 fairways on there. That's not a mistake, by the way. There's actually 2 fairways. So let's look at the pin there, because if they cut that off, it's actually a really short hole. And that one plays to a back left pin location. So you guys can see that over there. That's tough, right? So like even if they try and cut off that land on 7, kind of feels like they're not going to be able to take advantage of that. So, okay, so we got that one to work with. What else are we looking at? So the other par 5s are which holes? 10. So let's look at 10. Just tucked over a bunker. Yeah, it's not great for Eagles. Where's the other drivable par 4? So yeah, it's this one, 13. Well, you can't really drive this because of the water. So I guess we don't really have to look at that one. And then 18, let's look at that pin location because it's kind of reachable. So it's in the middle, but it's just over a bunker. I don't know. What's the multiplier on those? I guess that's the real determiner, huh? Is to see how much you're going to get paid. So it's only 3x higher. Yeah, I'd avoid them. Yeah, that's it. It doesn't feel like they're giving you enough juice there, in my opinion. Could I go over some of the slips I've made on Prize Picks and Hard Rock? I gave you a few props on Prize Picks. If you really want all of those, man, you got to check it out over there on my Patreon page. So Hard Rock Bet, I haven't had anything entered yet because they haven't posted birdie props. They only post those after play actually starts. So for Hard Rock, we won't even be able to look at the board quite yet. They just don't have it posted. Pick 6, good question. Honestly, I haven't looked at it this week. Let's take a look. Why not? So I gave a quick glance earlier. You can see over here, right? I had Xander Schauffele in there, out there for the full event stuff. So let's take a look at both boards. They have full event stuff up, and they also have by round. So if we click over here, right, you can find the stuff that's per round, or we can do the stuff that's for the entire golf tournament. So the reason why I like Xander is I think we're going to have like a 3.75 birdie average for the field. Somebody like Xander projects for like 4.5 birdies per round, right? So I've got him at about like 17, even 17.5 birdies. So for him to be at 14.5 is, in my opinion, too low. So he is probably my favorite entire tournament prop. Now, these other categories I'm just not as familiar with. Wait, we're on tournament, right? I have no idea what's going on. Oh, now it's on round? Okay, I want to be on tournament. Come on now. Slapdick ass pick 6 over here screwing with me. These are pretty much like made cut props, and honestly, I don't really like any of them they have up. So I'm just going to stay away from that category. It's also just a little bit of a headache to try and think through all those. Bogeys are worse. This is for the entire event. I saw a few guys that were down here at like 13.5, 14 that I was considering, but I don't have as good a read on the bogeys this week. I'm not sure how many we're going to see per round. So if I was going to do anything for a full event card, I would go with this Xander Schauffele over. And then you need somebody that's going to make the cut, right? Because like for these full event stuff, like if they don't make the cut, they're screwed. Like they're obviously not going to go over, and then vice versa, right? If you think somebody's going to miss the cut, then it's a pretty good spot to go out there and fade.
So I'm going to take the Xander Schauffele over, and then John Rahm over 15 birdies, right? Like I feel pretty good about him making the cut. And I think he should be up there with the Rahm, the Rory, even the Schefflers when it comes to the birdie mark. So for him to be at 15 and a half as opposed to 16 and a half or even 17 and a half like you have for Scotty is, in my opinion, a mistake, right? If I think it's going to be about a 4 birdie per round average at this course, maybe a little bit below that, right? Even if it's a 3.5 birdie per round average, right? John Rahm's projecting at least a half a birdie better than that. In 4 birdies times 4 rounds, right? 16 birdies, right? So 15 and a half it's more than doable, right? Especially if I'm expecting it to play a little bit easier this time around. So that'll be the combination for the full event stuff. Now let's look at the round by round stuff. So look, it's going to clear the card over there, obviously, because it's for a different slate. But let's see what we've got. So 4.5 for round 1. That's a little bit high. But 3.5, they've got some decent players to choose from here. So Wyndham Clark is an obvious value. Max Homa was a piece of value that we already took, but got taken off of the prize picks board. Morikawa is also at 3.5 and juiced over it, but Xander Schauffele. So let's keep this just a hyper elite value. So to ones that are just juiced through the roof towards the over. So let's do that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, dude, these pick 6 props are really good. The thing is, right, is you're playing against other people. So if they're really good, easy props, right, everyone's going to be able to take advantage of them. But the payouts aren't, I mean, they're not great, but they're not terrible as well. So yeah, these would be my favorite 3 props. So just to give you an idea why, they have these birdie props over here as well. So we went through the fairway stuff here, but let me find the birdie or better stuff. So to give you an idea of the sportsbook odds and these sort of plays, they've got Wyndham Clark at minus 185 over, which is like nearly minus 200 odds, which is implying about a 60% hit rate right there. Who else? So I believe they have odds up for all 3, but let's double check. So we're looking for, where's the pick 6 tab? We're looking for Xander Schauffele and Cam Smith. So they might not have a Cam Smith one up, but look at this. Xander Schauffele raised minus 145 towards the over, which honestly, I was expecting that to be even higher. But even then, right, it's a minus 140 prop. That's a lot of value that we're locking in. So these 3, in my opinion, should not be at 3.5, right? If anything, they should be at like 4 birdies. But because of how Pick 6 does it, they don't post guys at even number projections. So you're getting them at that sort of value. So that's what I would go with. You're going to have an over and an under to make a slip. So you're going to have to find something to mix in. If I was going to find, again, because I think the course is going to play the easiest it will all week, right, out there for Thursday, maybe you try to find like an under for strokes to mix in. So just kind of looking through the board right here, like a Corey Connors at 71.5 is an under that I would consider. But let me see if there's any better value. So like this DJ prop would probably be my favorite that I've seen so far. So like this is probably the slip that I would enter. Now you could make this, you could even like try and keep this a 3-man and take like Cam Smith for the under 71.5 strokes. But it'd be something along this combination that I go with for pick 6. So, yeah, I think they have this projected too difficult over here on this website. So not even just those props, but there'd be a lot that I'd be mixing and matching, right? There's a decent amount of these strokes props that make sense. So I guess just to point out a few so you can kind of mix and match them for slips. Like the under on Cam Young at that projection is really decent. The under in JT at 71.5, right? Like shoot even par and hit. That feels like a more than reasonable thing to ask. Heck, even Hovland at 71.5, right? Like that's a more than reasonable thing to ask. So maybe you stack up a bunch of these strokes props and then mix in one over for birdies. That could be another way to go out there and build a slip, right? So maybe you take those 3 and then you take Burns over birdies. That could be another way to go out there and get a combination going. So I can't enter these myself, or else I'd be spending a lot of time on pick 6 here on live stream. But that should give you an idea of how to attack it. I think that round by round board is probably like the best one that you can get. Did DK add new contests for golf? They did, yes. So let me show you. So it's a birdie or better only sort of thing. So okay, so I'll keep that out of there so I don't leak my length of my password and shit. But yes, they did. To answer your question, they did add those, and they're pretty cool. Let me bring up Hard Rock real quick. We'll see if there's any late ads worth adding, and then I'll hop on out of here. So we're already overtime here, so already past where I wanted to go. But hey, it's a major championship, so I want to make sure we go through all the questions and all the content that people are looking for. So let me go ahead, share my screen, and we'll check up on Hard Rock. Of course, Anthony, best of luck this week, man. Best play out of these guys. So you're looking between Connors, Zalatoris, or Noren. To me, it's Connors, but it's pretty close between Connors and Zalatoris. Noren, I worry a little bit about the off the tee ability. It's a really long golf course for him. In terms of what we're looking at over here on Hard Rock, they don't have any of those birdie props that I know we had a question about before. So I'll be waiting until play starts to put those in. But in terms of like these, matchup markets and whatnot, I was looking at some of these head-to-heads. So if you scroll down to the bottom here, you have these 18-hole match bets where you don't have to worry about the tie. I like that, right? I don't like having to worry about the tie when it comes to the outright odds. And just a few that were kind of catching my eyes. Let me see. I was looking at this DJ because he's the underdog versus Thagala. In my opinion, that makes no sense. DJ is just a better player than Sahith Thagala, and I love Sahith, don't get me wrong. But DJ is, even at this stage, still the better player. Who else do we have? There was Gooch versus Lowry. Yeah, the odds on that one made sense. And then there was one more that I wanted to mix in, and it was an 18-hole match. It wasn't a 72. Yeah, it was this one. So it was Benny Ann versus Cam Smith. Like, Cam Smith is a much better player than Benny Ann. Like, what are we doing? What world are we living in where these guys are underdogs to slapdicks? Like don't get me wrong, Sahith Thagala, great player, but like, he's an above average PGA Tour player, right? These guys are elite tier live players. And, for as much shit as you want to give the live tour, these guys would be elite tier PGA players if they came back, right? So it's not like they're only elite because they're on the live tour, and they're underdogs to inferior players. So if I was going to take anything on Hard Rock right now, right before we get the birdie board, some of the stroke stuff that I think they're going to post out here for the PGA Championship, this is the kind of prop that I'd be looking at. But that's all I've got for this live stream, guys. Like I said, we went a little bit over time. I still have a ton of lineups that I've got to put together. I've got a 150 max that I'm doing for this week. Also a bunch of single entries that I've yet to go out there and actually put in. So I've got a good idea on my exposure, right? Player pools already put together, but now we got to go out there and do the hard work, right? I'll go out there, get the right combinations, work on our rules, work on our leverage out there in the large field lineups. So a lot of work that your boy's going to do tonight. That's why we had the coffee in hand the whole time. And couldn't be more excited for it. So I'm stoked for this week. Best of luck out there with all of your exposure. Only thing I ask is that you smash the like button before you hop on out of here and ready to go out there and crush it for this week. We'll be doing those live streams for rounds 2 through 4, like I said. So make sure to tune back in for those and subscribe so you don't miss when I go live for those. On there, we'll be touching on Showdown. So the strategy for GPPs down there. Also props for rounds 2 through 4. So on my Patreon is where you can always find that content. But just like we went live here for tonight, we'll be doing the same thing out there Thursday night, Friday night, and then Saturday night out there for the final round. Appreciate you guys. Best of luck out there, and I'll see you guys for that round 2 live stream.